Come on by and have a bite at the CrossRoads Diner, where your spirit goes when it's time to pick a new direction. Here is your host, Steve McCurdy.
Welcome back to the CrossRoads Diner. I'm Steve McCurdy, your host, and with me today is a dear friend and an associate that I got to know a few years ago when I stepped into professional voiceover, and we worked together on a lot of things, and this guy is the leader in that field. Welcome, Domingo Castillo.
Thank you for having me, Steve. It's good to see you again.
It's wonderful to see you. Wonderful to see you. Domingo, we've talked a little bit about what the diner is about, and let's just talk a little bit about how when you were a kid, what did you, we're going to talk about how you got here, but we're going to start with where did you, I know that you wanted to be a fireman when you were 5, like everybody in the world. But when did that start taking a different shape for you?
I think things took a turn. So obviously as a kid, you have all these crazy interests, and sometimes they don't last for a couple of days or more than a couple of days. Right. But when I was 12, I found my mom's acoustic guitar in the closet, in my closet, and my brother and I shared a bedroom. And deep in the closet, here's this guitar case. I was 12 years old, and I said, what's this? And my mom said, I had that when I was younger. I was never very good at it. It hurt her fingers. But she didn't want to just get rid of the guitar. And I said, well, can I use it? Okay, great. And so that was 12. It was 40 years ago. I've never put it down, as you can see by my background there.
Right.
So long story short, it led to a life of a working professional musician. And so that's probably one of the first major turns that my life took, just this happenstance, finding this instrument. And what's funny is that, a few months down the road, wasn't a great quality instrument. So I asked my mom or my mom and dad, can we get a better one? And they say, well, okay. And so we go to the store, and they invest in a slightly better quality, with the rationale that, like all of the things, you're probably not going to be doing this 4 or 5 months later. And then, eventually my parents would start coming to my performances, and I would remind them, like, look, it's been 20 years and I'm still doing this. So thanks for sticking with me. So that's probably the first thing that comes to mind.
Wow. So, so you're how old? You're 12. How old are you?
I was 12 when I found that guitar. Yes.
Wow. So you didn't explore your closet very much. I mean, 12 years. You're
right. I didn't.
So it was a visual attraction, but then how did you? Playing guitar was difficult for me. It took me a while. My parents bought me a guitar from Sears, and it took vice grips to get when I first picked up a Martin and could just touch it and it would do things.
Sure.
I was so angry that I'd been trying to learn on this incredibly difficult instrument. Right. And that I thought, I know that they didn't have faith, and they certainly didn't have any money, but I wish I'd had a better chance to get started properly, but you did. How did the learning process go? Are you a natural musician?
I think I am. Most of it's all by ear that I learn. These days you can go online and someone can teach you how to play a song, but in 1982 that wasn't the case, and so I would just learn things by ear. I should back up a little bit. So that I was 12. A few years prior to that, my grade school had a music program where once a week, a music teacher would come to class. And do you know what a recorder is? Okay,
absolutely.
Good. It's basically plastic flute-like instrument, very inexpensive. But there was a music program for our grade school, and we all learned how to play the recorder. Put your finger in the hole and like a flute kind of thing. And there were specific songs that we learned, specific traditional songs, but over a weekend, I by ear, I taught myself, this must have been late 70s, because I taught myself how to play the Star Wars theme. Do, 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 do. And I was a big hit on Monday when I brought the thing to school. And so I guess doing that as a young kid, maybe I was a natural musician. Yeah, I never learned how to read music. I had a big mental block. I still do. So a lot of it is by ear or just by kind of finding my way around and fumbling and hopefully finding the right note at some point.
Well, we opened this episode with you were gracious enough to send me a clip to open the show with your relaxed guy next door voice. You're also, well known for the Sunday in the Dome, big thing, big voice. When did your interest move? Because you're a professional musician. You play gigs probably every weekend, right? Pretty close to it.
Yeah. So these days it's a little bit of a different story with what's going on these days. But at the height of we would do as many as 125 gigs a year.
Wow.
Yeah, that was, it was something else. I don't know that I'd want to do that again necessarily. Well, career has taken a different path now with voiceover work being the main voiceover work and teaching.
Right.
But I technically I'm still a working musician. Yes.
Right. But when did you discover the voice connection that you have? You've got a very, very dynamic voice. It's got a lot of range and capability. But that whole career, that's kind of everybody that I know has gotten into it through a back door some kind of way. How did that manifest for you?
Sure. A few years out of college, I think I was 23 or 24, I became aware of a local a broadcasting school. I didn't know these things existed. And so we're going back to the early 90s, mid 90s. And so I just kind of investigated this particular broadcasting school and I decided to enroll. I believe I was the youngest student of 21 or 22 students. And it started from there. So I live in Chicago. And so fortunately it is a larger market. But I remember when school ended, I applied for 3 positions. With 3 different radio stations. And I got all 3 of them.
Well, with that voice, I'm not surprised.
Well, I was, one of them was just an internship. It was 2 of them were to be on air. 1 of them was an internship.
Right.
And so I did 2 out of the 3. I wasn't able to fit all 3 of them in. But one of them, one of them involved recording commercials once a week. I would drive up to this suburban radio station. And they would put scripts in front of me and I would just read these scripts. And this was fun. And this went for several months. The second opportunity was an internship at a major station here in Chicago. And that was a wonderful experience. I will tell you that from that internship, ultimately I was hired. I started at the very bottom of the hierarchy. And I ended up working there for the next 17 years. Ultimately I had my own weekend show. I did countless production projects. It was a wonderful experience that led from, well, all these things kind of lead to each other, but it started from working for free as an intern and ultimately being hired. And it was a great experience.
What did they teach you at the school?
It was just, I shouldn't say just, but I believe it was a 16-week course. And every week it would be different themes. So maybe they did commercial reading for 3 or 4 weeks. And then the next 2 weeks, we're going to do sports reading. And then the next couple of weeks, we're going to do narration work. So they tried to cover different genres and then basic things like mic technique and then the physical nature of running the board.
Right.
Back then, the volume knobs were dials, not sliders, if you remember that.
I do. I do, with little colored discs in the middle.
Yeah, there you go.
Make them kind of sexy. So how would a class go? I mean, you said you're reading. And I know that we've done some things on the internet together, but our audience may not, and our audience may not be familiar with anything having to do with voiceover work. So why don't you just kind of walk us through what you did, how the feedback came, how that learning process unfolded? Sure.
And again, we're going back 30 years. So we're going back a while. I'm sure curriculum is a little bit adjusted these days, but for each of those sections of the 16-week, we would have a different instructor. And so here comes the commercial instructor, or here comes the sports person. And they would, because it was their field of expertise, they would be qualified to guide you. in that. So again, here comes the sports person. Okay, this person's been doing sports for a decade or so, and so they have the experience to be able to offer us their perspective on that. So again, in each section of the class, we would cover different genres, and there was only one studio at a time. So even though there were a lot of us in class, okay, now, and Steve, now it's your turn. And so we all listened to Steve read his sports script, and then the instructor would critique, okay, now it's Domingo's turn. And so nowadays there are multiple studios available, but it was just a single classroom and one live room available at the time.
Did the other students do anything in the way of critique, or was it all instructor led?
Yeah, that's true. I think it was, at the time, it was instructor led. I mean, maybe we were allowed to offer our opinion, but most of us were kind of green, kind of new at it. Right. So,
right. But I would imagine that just like in our online stuff that we did, listening to someone else do something, you can't not learn. I mean, you can't not go, oh, I think I'm going to try that. I think I'm going to, I like this part. I didn't like that.
Agreed. You're right. Yeah. So much of learning is being able to hear other people's example, or to see someone, if you're not going first, well, okay, great. Steve's going first. I'm going to watch what Steve does. And I like how he did that. I'm going to borrow some of that for my take. Okay. Now it's my turn. So you're right. We learn from watching each other, and yeah, I agree with you.
So many people that I have on the show have been on a variety of paths. And maybe it took them a while before they got on the path that they really wanted, because they needed to lean on security. They needed to lean on, mom and dad's expectations, that sort of thing. Have you had a journey like that at all?
Well, I mean, I lived at home for a while. I didn't go away to college. I actually didn't go. The extent of my college experiences was 2 classes. I took a photography class and I took a piano class. And then when the class was over, I liked it so much, let's take the 200 class. So I took photography 200 and piano 200. And that was the extent of my college experience. I don't have a college degree. Ironically, I ended up teaching college for the next 23 years. But well, that's funny how that works out. But my point is, I lived at home for a while, and I had a great support system. Yeah. My parents were always very supportive of whatever interest we got into. So, I remember being 18, and a fair amount of my friends went off to college. I didn't know what I wanted to study, so I just kind of drifted for a while. I worked in retail for a few years, and I actually enjoyed that, but I knew that wasn't necessarily the career that I wanted to go in. So I think my parents at some point in my early 20s sat me down and they said, okay, you're living at home. That's fine. You're welcome to live at home as long as you like, but let's get you moving in a direction. And they said, is there a trade? They knew I loved automobiles. They said, do you want to go to automotive, learn auto? I thought about that, and they said, we see you like photography. Let's have you study that. And right around that time is when I found this broadcasting school. And so I came to them and I said, I think I'd like to attend this broadcasting school. And so I am very fortunate that my parents were able to support me, in my young 20s, and say, okay, you want to go to school? Great. Let's set it up. Let's do it. You better do well because we're paying for this. And so, okay, I'll do well.
Right.
And so I like to think I made
What did your parents do?
My mom, well, first of all, I'm Filipino, which means they were in the medical field. So, as you know, yes, my mom was a nurse for over 40 years.
Why are you not in scrubs is my question.
There you go. My mom was a nurse for over 40 years, and my father also worked in the medical profession as a orthopedic technician.
Okay.
And as a kid, I didn't really know what that meant, but I learned that if you got a cast on your arm, he was the person who would put the cast on your arm, and then he was also the person who would take the cast off. So he worked in that department for a while.
Cool. And your brother?
Yeah.
Which way did he go?
My brother. So it's kind of funny because my brother is a year younger, and yet we're very different personalities. He's not. He has no musical inclination as far as playing an instrument, but he loves music, soul, Motown, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and we like a lot of that older music together. But his studies were kind of more intellectual, and so he does mortgage banking and things like that. So for instance, my wife and I moved into this home a few years ago, and I was lucky enough. My brother was able to help me set up the mortgage for this place because that's what he does. So his line of work is decidedly different from what I do, but no, that's how we complement each other.
Yeah. So you grew up in Chicago then?
Yes, correct.
Okay, cool. So as we're looking at these, you did not have a path where you had to. There wasn't a bright light in the sky, and you had a calling. You got interested in something, and you were encouraged to take interest in something because you were living at home in your 20s, and your mom and dad said, we love being supportive. Make it pay. And so you went and found a career. He's on the horns of a dilemma, but we're about to find out how that works out. Right now, I'm going to ask you if you are enjoying and benefiting at all from CrossRoads Diner, that you give us a like or a subscription, and even leave us a review on Spotify or Podbean or wherever you're listening to the broadcast, because we're wanting to build this, and we need your help to do that. We're right here at the front end. We need all the help and friends that we can get. Now, the next guest that we're going to have is Reverend Bob Johnson, Houston, Texas. He was an engineer, and he got a calling, and he was at a place in his life where it was not very convenient. Let's take a look at a couple of those things.
She says, but you're going to put your kids' education at risk, and therefore you're going to put their lives at risk. This is a terrible decision.
How did you cope with that? And also, give me a read on Susan through this.
Susan was never anything but supportive.
That doesn't surprise me.
No matter how much the naysayers were, like I said, the only thing, she never said don't do it. She just said, if you lose your job, how are we going to pay for this birth that's coming up? And there's all kinds of other ways, too, that I could tell you if we had time about the ways she was supportive. But basically, she was very supportive.
So a recurring theme in the CrossRoads Diner is that when we are going our own way, it's very important to have some support and have that support be as close to you and as credible as possible. Let's take a look at Domingo and the support that he found from kind of an unexpected place. Your professional career involves music. I would imagine you sing with that.
Yeah, in the band we basically all sing.
Oh, do you?
So yeah, you're right.
And then you do all this vocal work, and you were working for stations, and now you do freelance.
Since 2016, I've been freelancing. You're right. So yeah, I'm not necessarily the radio gig went away. I think in 2009. Radio's kind of changed in recent decades, as everybody knows. We all kind of saw it coming. But yes, I was teaching at the college, teaching radio classes, broadcasting. I was working at the radio station, and then I was also working as a full-time musician. In 2009, the radio station went away, so I was down to 2 jobs, and that's okay. And so I can, but then the college also, things kind of changed there. And after 23 years, COVID and things started getting weird. So I started offering classes from home. Mm-hmm. I started teaching my voiceover coaching curriculum from home in 2020. And I'm never going back. I love teaching from home.
And I as one of your students, I've always loved the way that we work together. It's very easy. It's very comfortable. But how did you get started in teaching? How did that come into your life?
So here's a wonderful example of how, if you're open, the universe will present these opportunities and look into them. Right. So I was at this radio station, and I think this again in my early 20s, maybe mid 20s. So we're looking at mid 90s, and somebody at the station, the assistant news director, her name was, I'll leave her name out of it. But she was connected to someone who taught here at Columbia College here in Chicago, and they would have lunch together. And the person from the college was saying to the news director from my station, we have a position here at our college. Do you know of anybody? And my coworker at the radio station. Well, there's this long-haired intern that we just hired, and he seems to love production, and he's got a lot of enthusiasm, and maybe look into, oh, and by the way, here's his demo. They somehow, so the director at the college somehow got a hold of my production demo. I don't know how that happened, but you put your demo out there, and it who knows? So I interviewed, and I'll back up even more, but a fax came. Fax, there we go. A fax came to my mailbox at the radio station, and it said Columbia College is looking to seek an artist in residence position to teach. And I saw the word teach, and I kind of laughed out loud. And one of my colleagues said, "What's so funny?" And I said, "Look, they want me to teach. I'm holding this piece of paper. They want me to teach." And I said, "Why is that funny?" I said, "Well, I never went to college. I don't have a degree." And then he said, but that's not funny. I say, he said, the reason you dismiss it, I think you're afraid of it. Why you should look into that opportunity. Why don't scoff, don't dismiss it. Why not look into it and see if it works out, great. If not, okay, keep laughing. But this person was right. I dismissed it because I was afraid of it. I never thought of myself as a teacher. I was kind of that smart aleck person in the back of the class who could kind of skate by and get B's, B plus, B minus, and not even have to study.
Right.
But I never thought of myself as a teacher, but I met with the person at the college, and he said, well, I asked him, I said, you want me to teach? And he's, yeah, I've never taught before. I never went to college. I put my hand up. I'm not trying to mislead anybody, but I don't have any college experience. And he said, "Can you follow a syllabus?" And I didn't know what a syllabus was, but I just said yes. I said, "Great," because it's all lined up for you. And every week and then he explained to me, every week, here's what you're teaching. Every week you're teaching this. Okay, follow a syllabus. Great. And then he also said, "I've heard your demo. Is that you doing all that? Is that your voice? Is that you executing all those moves?" And I said, "It's 100% me." And it was great. "I want you to teach students how to do what you did on your demo." So I was 26, 27 when that started.
Did you know at the time?
Right?
Let me interrupt you for a second. Did you know at the time how you did all of that, or was it all intuitive?
How I did? No, I was taught how to execute those moves, and sure, from my internship here, I worked with a wonderful, I'll say his name, Bill Cochran, is the creative services director at the station I worked at, and we're still friends. And he was absolutely one of the monumental mentors in my life, right. Interning with Bill Cochran. And he taught me a lot of these things. Also by example, I would just kind of silently watch him work, watch him produce a commercial. And I had my notebook, and I would observe. So I learned how to do a lot of that stuff from my internship, from classes, and from watching him.
Okay. So, and as a result, you've had huge numbers of students over the years, and your relationship with them in many cases, I'm sure, was technical and teaching them things. But also, I imagine, like me and Bob and others, that there's a personal element to that as well, and you kind of get to know. Mm. So have you observed this phenomenon I'm talking about, where a person isn't sure if what they feel they want is what they should be doing?
Sure. I think all creative people doubt themselves. I think just in general, all people doubt themselves at some point. And sometimes you're right. To your point, you're not sure if this is the direction you should be going in. But I think there's a song lyric that says, "If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice." Yeah. Perhaps, maybe I won't make a decision at this point. Okay, well, then that's my choice. But at some point, maybe you do need to decide. And so you go in that direction and you give it your best, and either it'll work out or it doesn't, and then you pivot and move on to something else. But yeah, the universe has a funny way of guiding you into things if you're tuned into it, if you're listening. So I'm married to a person I met when I was 16. Huh. We met in high school. We met in 1986. And so I should offer you this. So I went to an all boys Catholic school my first year of high school. And at some point, my mom wanted to put me in public high school. She said, why am I paying for that? I'm paying taxes. We're going to send you to public high school. I resisted. But when I went to the public high school my second year, I had to make up these first year classes. So I was in a class with students from an earlier year. And so that's how I met my wife, because my wife is 1 year younger than I am. I met her in history class because I had to make up that history class. And so we met and we dated, and it was a little bit of a mess because a 16-year-old boy is an idiot, 17-year-old boy. And so I did a good job messing that up. But we still remained friends for 10 years, 10 years after that. And then we lost touch for 15 years. And then in 2010, 15 years later, she came back into my life. And then I realized, this is who I should be with. And so, it's wonderful how all things kind of lead to each other.
Yeah. The one of the things that I like, we deal with a lot, particularly when I'm dealing with young people who have a bent toward the arts, is they don't get many of them don't have parents that are as supportive as yours were, or relatives, or there's criticism, or there's fear. You identified fear is probably the biggest obstacle anybody faces, or most of the obstacles that people face probably have elements of fear as their underpinning, and that fear is related to fear of failure. But everybody that I know that's an artist has bombed somewhere at some point in time, and they are still alive. They didn't die as a result of that. Some of them changed careers, but not all of them did. And so can you talk about failure? Can you talk about the learning process that comes from that, the growth, the pain, just that whole perspective on it, nothing ventured, that kind of idea?
You're right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, so I think about your case. You've had so many. I know that you've performed on stages. You've performed live, and I bet you. I mean, I was just thinking about your situation. I mean, there must have been a time when maybe you were kind of afraid to step on stage because you'd never done it before. I mean, I'm just kind of turning it around and thinking, well, geez, Steve, what was it like the first time you performed on stage? I bet you there was a lot of fear involved, and maybe you did fail, and maybe that did teach you. But so to answer your question, I continue to teach from home. I taught. I think it's 270 something. I keep track of every one of my classes. I didn't.
Yeah, you are such a statistician. It's amazing.
Well,
you track things.
I'm a weirdo.
Oh, I love that.
I think it's 285th class. I taught a class yesterday, and in blunt speak, I made a mistake. I made a mistake, and I actually, so I recognized it, and I was working it out, and then even this morning I woke up and I kind of felt bad about, I did something wrong, and then I addressed it correctly, but the biggest part is I have to learn to forgive myself. It's like, okay, I screwed up. Okay, great. It's not the last time it's going to happen. You're going to continue making mistakes, but the lesson, okay, maybe I should have been more careful, or maybe I should have approached it differently. And so I'm 52, and I certainly don't know it all. I will never know it all. And I feel that no matter what age I am, I will still make mistakes, and I still will be humble enough to admit, you know what, I did that wrong. I should have done it differently. I'm not going to do that again. And so that's where I am. Right. So this just happened not even 24 hours ago.
I think the biggest thing that you've said there that resonates so strongly with me is self-forgiveness. I think it's we can't start learning and getting over failures until we forgive ourselves for having the humanity to have tripped into it. And I think once we do that, though, now we're free to learn. Now we're free to open up and go, well, what can I get from this? What are the things that I need to avoid? I need to be able to look at them. I need to not be paralyzed by the impossible notion that I would make a mistake. and to look at it and go, okay, how'd that go? Because I could see when you were telling the story how emotionally uncomfortable you were with the impact that you had made on the student. I don't know the nature of the error, but obviously it was important enough to you that you felt badly about it and then were able to take some action. But I think that that's another thing that I want to have this show kind of address is grace. You know, and when I wrote the musical, The CrossRoads Diner, it's a place where your spirit goes when it's time to change direction. And the waitresses are faith and hope and grace. And, you know, faith is your, faith is the present. You know, faith is the ability right now to make decisions. Hope is the future, the things that you're moving toward. And grace is the forgiveness of the past and the acceptance that you've got a path forward. And so I think all of us need to avail ourselves of those waitresses when we're in the CrossRoads Diner and look at where we are, how we got here, where we want to go, and what it's going to take to get there, and then be willing to make the commitment to get up and go do that. Because as you say, we're not going to do it perfectly, but we're not going to learn anything if we do it perfectly. We're just going to, take a bow. So for the folks that are coming to you, folks, students that you might have, where can folks connect with you in a way that if they're interested in voice training, that sort of thing, how can they connect with you?
Sure. Obviously, I have my website. I should have had this ready. But you could find me at domingovoiceover.com. Domingo Voiceover. I was trying to see if I can find it. I think I do. Here, let's do this.
Can you do a screen share?
So my website. I can. Like, oops. Well, this is live, isn't it?
That's all right.
I'll go here and I go like this. There I am. Domingovoiceover.com.
Thank you.
So that's my website. I'll leave the. Oops, backwards.
No,
is it backwards?
No, you're fine.
Okay, I'm fine. Or I can flip it.
No, I will if I need to in the post, and I'll put links in the show notes as well. How would that work? How would people, if they connect with you, what can they expect?
Sure. Well, I assume they have a question or they have an interest in something. I offer VO coaching, and sometimes people just have kind of general questions, and that's okay too. We could schedule a time. If you're on LinkedIn, that's probably the best place to find me because you and I connect there as well. I'm not on any of these other social. I can't keep up. I can't keep up with. So find me on LinkedIn, Domingo Castillo. You can go to my website or you can find me on LinkedIn. And I'm happy to connect or address any thoughts that you might have. And,
how about, is there a basic class? Is there an entry level to voiceover class that you offer?
Yeah, I don't. People have asked that. My classes are comprised of students who have been doing this for a while, and also those who are sometimes a little bit new. And so I don't have a beginner or advanced level. So I offer group classes, and my group is never more than 5 students. I keep it small and manageable, and so we never feel like. Sometimes when you're in a larger class, you're kind of waiting a little while for your turn. This way, with 5 students, you're not waiting as long. So I offer the group class, or I also, in February, March of this year, I started offering one-on-one sessions. Okay. And so that's been a wonderful progression for me this year. Students have been approaching me in recent months, when are you going to offer this? And I wasn't able to make it happen. But 2 days a week, 2 afternoons a week, I offer one-on-one sessions. So sometimes students like that because it's just,
and particularly if they got something in particular they need to work on it. And I will just say that the hours that I have spent in the groups that you and I have been in, they're very congenial, very professional, but very human. It's often a very presentational and arm's length kind of business that, you are just a voice, you're kind of a commodity. And so to have that fellowship among folks that are working on a thing together is very powerful to get that kind of feedback and that honesty. And one of the other things that you have always done with the groups that I have been affiliated with is that we find incredible ways to be supportive of one another and kind of say, yeah, that could use a little bit of polish, but man, this is where you shine. This is the good stuff here. Don't second guess yourself over there. And it's very, very encouraging to have a fellow professional affirm that for you. And it helps you have a lot more confidence going into auditions and whatnot. Plus, there's just the basic business of the business and how, some of the tips that we have shared on things like that. Domingo, we're out of time, and I hate that, but
okay.
Thank you for sharing your journey. And any last words of wisdom for folks that might be thinking about it? Because it's a field that men and women are in demand equally, I would say. Well, maybe not equally, but women have a big opportunity now.
They do. It is becoming more equalized. Yes, as it pertains to voiceover, remember that you don't have to have an amazing, pristine, impressive, super polished sound. If you look at a lot of current commercial voice work, a lot of it is just, I don't mean to say just, but they want people who don't sound like voice actors. And so keep in mind, if you haven't had a lot of experience as a voice actor, well, maybe you have an advantage because you are very authentic.
My children's mom was the workingest voiceover actress in Houston for many years, and she was young mom. She just had the voice of a young mom, and all those commercials that came up for everything, everything that an individual buys who is a young mom, they would call Alyssa because she sounded exactly like what she was, a young mom. And so, but you do have to learn some things about technique and rhythm and enunciation and whatever. So, I point you to Domingo, and thank you again for being in the CrossRoads Diner.
Thank you for having me.
Come on by and have a bite at the CrossRoads Diner, the place your spirit goes when it might be time to change direction. If you've enjoyed the CrossRoads Diner and you think it's touched some part of you, look back through the episodes, find one that's your favorite, and share it with someone who you think might be at one of their own crossroads. It could be a person who's in financial trouble, a person who's in a family crisis, or someone who's been doing something for a while. They're good at it, but maybe now it's time to look at doing something more in line with their heart. Share us with them. It could be the very thing that they need. And we'll be back with you next week, right here on the CrossRoads Diner.